They say you can see the Great Wall of China from space. But is that really true? Or is it one of the biggest myths of all time? Think about it. Of all the things humans have built, why would this be the one thing visible from space? What about skyscrapers? Or massive cities lighting up the night? Is the Great Wall really that special? Today, we're diving deep into the truth behind this legendary claim. And trust me, the answer might surprise you. But before we reveal the shocking truth, let me ask you this. What's the biggest human-made structure you think should be visible from space? Drop your guesses in the comments and let's see who gets it right. So, where did this whole idea even come from? Who started saying, hey, you know what, the Great Wall of China, totally visible from space? Well, one of the earliest recorded mentions of this claim goes way back, before humans even went to space. In the 18th century, an English writer named William Stukeley casually wrote that the Great Wall was visible from the moon. Yes, the moon. That's right, before anyone even left Earth, people were already making wild claims about what astronauts could see. Classic. But this idea really took off in the 20th century, when school textbooks and even NASA-related materials repeated the myth. By the time space travel became a reality, the world had pretty much accepted it as fact. But here's the big question: how far do you actually have to go before you're officially in space? Because that changes everything about what we can and can't see. And trust me, the truth is not what you expect. When we say visible from space, we need to define one key thing. Where does space actually begin? A lot of people think space starts way out there, past the moon, floating next to aliens and Elon Musk's Tesla. But in reality, space is much closer than you might think. There's something called the Kármán line, which is an imaginary boundary 100 kilometers, 62 miles, above Earth's surface. Once you cross that, congratulations, you're officially in space. But here's the thing. Astronauts don't just hang out at the edge of space. The International Space Station, ISS, where astronauts live and work, orbits at around 400 kilometers, 250 miles above Earth. That's about the distance from New York to Washington, D.C. So, let's think about this. If you were flying in a plane at 30,000 feet, 9 kilometers, could you see a road on the ground? Maybe. But could you see a single wall from 400 kilometers up? That's a different story. And before we answer that, we need to talk about one very important thing: the human eye. Because what we think we can see isn't always what we actually see. All right, let's talk eyeballs. Your eyes are amazing, but they're also limited. There's something called angular resolution, which is basically how much detail your eyes can pick up from a certain distance. For example, if you've ever tried reading a street sign from far away and it looked like blurry nonsense, that's because your eyes couldn't resolve the details. The further away you are, the harder it is to distinguish individual objects. Now let's apply that to space. From the ISS, about 400 kilometers up, astronauts can see large features on Earth: coastlines, mountains, big cities. But spotting a wall that's only about 6-9 meters wide? That's like trying to see a single human hair from across a football field. Not looking great for the Great Wall, huh? But before we rule it out, let's hear from the people who have actually been up there, because their answers will shock you. Astronauts have been to space. They've looked down at Earth. So what do they say? Well, here's the actual truth. The Great Wall of China is not easily visible from space with the naked eye. In fact, the first Chinese astronaut, Yang Liwei, went to space in 2003 and was specifically asked if he could see the Great Wall. His answer? Nope. Even NASA astronauts have confirmed that while large structures like airports and major cities are visible, the Great Wall is just too narrow and blends in too well with the surrounding landscape. But here's where things get even more interesting. Visibility from space isn't just about size. It also depends on something most people don't think about: weather and lighting. Imagine trying to see something tiny on the ground while looking through a foggy window. That's what Earth's atmosphere does. It distorts visibility. If it's cloudy, forget about seeing anything clearly from space. But even on a clear day, lighting is a massive factor. For example, at certain times of day, shadows cast by mountains and buildings make them stand out more. But the Great Wall? It's made of earth-tone materials, meaning it blends into the landscape. It's basically nature's own camouflage. But here's a twist. Some astronauts have claimed to see parts of the Great Wall, but only under very specific conditions. When snow covers it in the winter, it sometimes becomes easier to spot. So can you see the Great Wall of China from space? Well, the final answer might surprise you. But before we get to that, there's one more thing we need to consider, something even bigger than the Great Wall itself. Stay tuned, because we're about to uncover the biggest man-made thing that actually is visible from space. But before we reveal the biggest man-made thing actually visible from space, we need to talk about something even more important. Because a lot of the confusion around this whole Great Wall from space thing comes from one big misunderstanding: satellite images versus the human eye. When people hear you can't see the Great Wall from space, they often respond with something like, "But I saw a satellite image of it," and you know what? They're not wrong. But here's the key difference. Satellites have cameras, and cameras work very differently from human eyes. A satellite can zoom in, enhance details, and capture images using wavelengths beyond what our eyes can see. Some even use infrared or radar imaging to highlight features invisible to the naked eye. It's like looking at a blurry photo on your phone and then using a fancy AI tool to sharpen it. The data was always there, you just couldn't see it. So yes, satellites can capture the Great Wall, but astronauts floating in space looking down with just their eyes, that's a completely different story. And that brings us to the real question: what human-made objects can actually be seen from space? The Great Wall of China might not be the best thing to look for, but some human-made structures are clearly visible from space. So what makes something easy to spot? Size, contrast, and brightness. Here are a few things astronauts have confirmed they can see from orbit. Cities at night. The lights of major cities shine like a web of golden veins across the darkness. New York, Tokyo, and Dubai are especially striking. Major airports, because they have large reflective surfaces and bright lighting. Airports stand out. Dams and reservoirs. Massive water structures like the Three Gorges Dam in China are visible due to their size and the contrast between land and water. Desert roads, some long highways, especially those cutting through deserts, are visible because they stand out against the surrounding landscape. The pyramids of Giza. Yep, those ancient wonders can be spotted, but only if lighting conditions are just right. Notice a pattern. These objects have clear contrast, bright reflections, or large unnatural shapes. The Great Wall, on the other hand, it blends in too well with the terrain, making it extremely hard to spot. But what if I told you some astronauts thought they saw it, only to realize later that they were completely wrong? Here's where things get tricky. Even trained astronauts can experience optical illusions in space. The way light reflects, the atmosphere distorts, and the brain processes visual information. All of these can trick people into seeing things that aren't actually there. In some cases, astronauts thought they were looking at the Great Wall, but later analysis showed they were actually seeing rivers, roads, or natural ridges that just happened to look similar from orbit. It's like looking at clouds and seeing shapes. Our brains naturally try to recognize patterns even when they aren't real. So even if an astronaut thinks they saw the Great Wall, chances are it was something else. But let's go one step further. How does the Great Wall compare to other famous landmarks when viewed from space? The Great Wall of China is long, over 21,000 kilometers, 13,000 miles, but length doesn't always mean visibility. Let's compare it to some other famous landmarks. The Burj Khalifa, Dubai, the tallest building in the world but nearly invisible from space because it's narrow. The Hoover Dam, USA, small but visible because of the stark contrast between water and concrete. The Palm Islands, Dubai, man-made islands in the shape of a palm tree, super easy to see from orbit because they contrast with the ocean. The Great Pyramid of Giza, small but sometimes visible because of its unique shadow. Compared to these, the Great Wall faces two problems. It's too thin and it blends in with the land. If it were made of bright white stone like the pyramids or surrounded by water like the Palm Islands, we might have a different story. But here's the real question. With modern technology, can we finally prove this once and for all? Today we have better tools than ever before. High-resolution satellites, AI-enhanced imaging, and even deep learning algorithms that can scan vast landscapes. So what happens when we take the best modern technology and point it at the Great Wall? Well, when we use super zoomed-in satellite images, we can detect parts of the wall. But remember, that's not what the original claim was about. The claim was about seeing it with the human eye from space. Even with the best modern telescopic cameras, it's still incredibly hard to pick out the wall without enhancements. So after all this, what's the final answer? So, can you see the Great Wall of China from space with the naked eye? The answer is no, at least not in the way most people think. Astronauts have consistently reported that it's nearly impossible to see, and modern technology backs that up. While satellite images can capture it, that's not the same as an astronaut looking down and spotting it with their own eyes. So where did the myth come from? Probably a mix of old legends, misinterpretations, and a little bit of wishful thinking. But here's the bigger takeaway. Space is huge. Earth is beautiful. And even though the Great Wall might not be the most visible thing from orbit, our planet is still full of breathtaking sights, many of which are even more incredible than a single wall of bricks. Speaking of myths, there's another popular claim that people believe without questioning. Have you ever heard the idea that humans only use 10% of their brains? Sounds amazing, right? But what if I told you that's also a huge myth? In fact, Hollywood made an entire movie based on that idea, Lucy. And guess what? They got it completely wrong. Want to know the truth about that? I just made a full video breaking it down, and trust me, it's even crazier than the Great Wall myth. Check it out next.